I'm very excited. Hello, friends. Today I am joined by my husband and two of my friends and my dog, who is currently behind Sean. And we are going to be chatting about season 1 of Arcane. I've watched the show 3 times. Sean's watched it twice. And then Christy and Sarah both watched it for the first time. And Christy just finished it yesterday. The day we're recording this, the day before that is when she finished it. So, Christy, I feel you should kick us off right now with your we'll go right into spoilers. Don't worry about, with general thoughts. You have to keep it spoiler free necessarily, but we'll start with just general. What were your thoughts of the show?
Okay, so my initial thought, or after I finished it, I was just like, why did it take me so long to watch this? And I like all the previous discussions we've had of other stuff, and then every time you bring up Arcane, it's like, what, you still haven't watched it yet? So I'm like, okay, like I really need to watch it now. And honestly, like no notes. Like it literally has everything that I just love in a story, in like fantasy sci-fi, all of the characters, all the tropes and plot. It's actually perfect.
I know. I felt bad for a long time being that annoying friend that's like, so when you gonna watch it though? And
No, but
because
that's what I need sometimes to like get to all the things that I'm like, oh, I'll get to it eventually.
I was just very sure that you would at least enjoy it. I was pretty sure you wouldn't hate it, but I didn't know the full extent of how much you would love it. But it makes me very happy to hear you loved it as much as you did. Sarah, also first time viewer. What were your
Yes.
general thoughts?
Well, so at first I was a little bit nervous because I was like, I don't think I like this. And it took it took like 2 to 2.5 episodes, and then I was like, wait, okay, here we go. I like this. And then I loved the rest of it. So yeah, I was thinking about it and I was like, would I want to rewatch, like if I rewatched it, which I probably would I want to rewatch the beginning? Because like I really was like, do I want to continue this show?
Yeah.
But then like how much I loved the rest of it, but I think I would want to rewatch the beginning, even though the kind of like setup and everything, I was like, I feel like I've seen this kind of before, but I think it all comes together so well. And I was just like so invested. So
I had a combination the first time I watched it, I think, of both of your experiences. Where Sarah, I was actually kind of thinking similar things to you when especially the first episode, because it had already been hyped up at that point. And the first episode, I was thinking, this feels kind of familiar, this ragtag group of kids, and they live in this area that's not great. It didn't feel like it was that different from a lot of other things. And it actually felt like it was leaning into tropes too much at first. And then I think once you get about, like you were saying, 2.5 episodes in, then it was really starting to click. And the end of episode 2 especially was when I was like, okay, I'm invested. When you think like, oh my gosh, is Vi gonna turn herself in? And I think that's when I was locked in. And then Sean and I watched the entire show in one night after being convinced with the end of episode 2. But by the end of it all, I then was like Christy, where I was like, why did it take us so long to watch this? So I definitely ended up having a combination of both of your feelings. And Sean, I feel like you've kind of been interesting in that you definitely also liked it the first time. And then I remember when I watched it for the second time, I actually watched it with my mom because I was watching her dog. And then when she came home, she was like, is there anything fun that like we could watch? I was like, you want to watch Arcane?
Such a fun show. Yeah. That's what I think of when I think of Arcane. Yeah. It's a fun time.
Yeah. And you definitely think my mom for sure.
Yeah.
And it was funny because
Mary would love this.
And she was getting super into it. And it was funny because the first introduction of Silco, she was like, like with the experiment in the little container with the cat and stuff like that. She was like, oh my gosh, like all flabbergasted and stuff. And then she got really into it. And then it was funny because she kept saying, my mom kept being like, that's just like not a show I would have ever watched on my own. And she ended up loving it. I was like, yes. But regardless, the second time I watched it is when the parallels between Victor as a child versus as an adult when he runs and the boats that whole detail, I was like, oh my gosh, when I rewatched it, I almost started crying when he was a little boy. So then when the running scene happened, I was like, ah, geez, he's faster than the boats now. You know, I was just like having a meltdown, and I told Sean about it, and then I was like showing him the scene again. And then Sean, your reaction was like, man, that's a good show. I need to rewatch it. So now that you have rewatched it, what were your thoughts upon rewatch?
Well, I want to say my thoughts upon my first watch were actually pretty similar to Sarah. I thought it was fine. It took me till it was like, wait, did little Powder just murder her accidentally? I guess murder is probably not the right word, but did she just like kill her two friends? That's when I was like, oh, I'll watch some more. Because I did think the first few were kind of, they're not bad, but they're not as good as the rest. I also think like it's none of it I don't think is like super duper amazingly original. It just does it really well. I just feel like the story and the writing, it's like there's familiar things but just done exceptionally. I also think so watching it a second time though, I was like, dang, this what's 9 episodes? Like that kind of blew my mind too, because a lot happens in 9 episodes. I think because we had been watching Attack on Titan, I'm like, we needed like 30 episodes to kind of, you know, get the ball rolling. I was kind of surprised that like, all right, well, 9 episodes and that's it. Guess we're done. But it's
9
good.
They really pack a lot in emotionally too in 9 episodes. So I because I kind of was talking about Victor and the boats and stuff like that, I figure we'll just go ahead and jump into some notable moments, favorite moments, or we've been talking about the things that hooked us. So it can be a combination. If you want to mention what was if you could pinpoint the moment that you were like, oh, okay, I'm in, and then moments that you also just can't get over, whether they're funny or impactful or cool, whatever the case may be. So we got a taste of Christie's because you were like messaging us aggressively as you were watching toward the end. But what were some notable moments for you?
In terms of like when the moment was that I was like absolutely hooked was, so we knew that there was some kind of like background between Vander and Silco, but we didn't know like too much about it. And like when they do the whole like, you were my brother but you betrayed me, I was like, oh my god, this show knows what it's doing and I'm falling for it. Like it's like that's like one of my favorite tropes. It's like so Star Wars Anakin and Obi-Wan. And I'm like, I just and then you see like when Vander is about to like kill Silco, right? And then it shows like the flashbacks to their past and that exact same pose and the parallels between those two scenes, and then Silco reaching for I don't know what he was, like a knife or something, and then like it just played out so well with the flashback in the past, and I'm like, this is so well directed.
Yeah. And I speaking of parallels and that pose you're talking about, I'm sure you've seen the like side by sides of Vander grabbing Silco and then Vi grabbing Jinx Powder. It's so heartbreaking to see those two. Have you seen them before?
I haven't seen that.
Okay, I'll find it in a sec here, but
I haven't seen that either.
Okay, I'll find that in a second. But Sean, when would you say, aside from Powder with the whole involuntary manslaughter, besides that, I also recall by the end of episode 4, because a lot of episode 4, it was like, where's Vi? And I remember Sean, when we were watching, he's like, dude, where is she? So
I was very upset.
Yeah, but what was the moment that hooked you?
I don't know about, I mean, I think that was a moment that hooked me, so I was pretty okay after that. But a notable moment I thought was I don't know, the Jace Vi tag team, and then you're like hyped, you're like, yeah, get him, and then he kills a kid by accident, and you're just like, why do you have to take away my hype right now? I was really excited to watch some butt kicking, and now it's like, oopsie, I killed a kid. That was pretty heartbreaking. And yeah, good part though.
Well, that and going back to the Victor scene, sorry, this will come up a number of times, but same thing, like they get you so happy or feeling like, yeah, let's go. And when he's running, you're like, oh my gosh, he's running. And then Sky dies, and you're like, oh my gosh, Sky's dead. And it's just so many emotions in, because to your point earlier, Sean, about how I can't believe it was only 9 episodes. In my head, Sky dies a little bit later. But it's like within the same 2 minutes where you're like, why do you have to take away all of my joy? So yeah, I definitely think it does that quite a bit.
Weirdly, to kind of go off of that, the I'm sure we'll talk about this more too, but the Jinx and Echo fight where you see them as kids and then as adults. For some reason, in my head, that lasted way longer. I think like the first time we watched it, I was like, this is amazing. And I was like really into it. The second time, it was still good, but like I was like, oh, I guess like it's done.
Yeah.
Wow.
Damn. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. It's so good, but also so sad. Anyway. Yeah, I think we'll get to that scene. When I was editing all of my deep dives for the, this first season, I saw fans of the game have noted, I guess Echo has almost time manipulation abilities, and the amount of time that goes by when he clicks the thing is like how many seconds within that scene or something like that, or how many seconds are like actually going by. So I'm like, wow, that's a really cool detail to include. But one of those things, like, you're not going to know if you're not aware
I do love that
of
when he like starts it and the music starts. So
and the swinging of it and how it swings, and it's her as an adult in front of him and then her as a kid. I can't talk about that scene. I don't know what it is. That scene, like when I was getting, again, for editing purposes, when I was getting clips of that scene, I was just like, John, can you have me the tissues? Because I was so emotional about it. Anyway, so yeah, those scenes are all fantastic. I feel kind of bad, Sarah, you going last in this instance, because it's like, what's left for you to pick from? Which, I mean, granted, there's a lot of great scenes, but I feel like we're tapping into some of the best.
Well, so the one that got me hooked is like in the warehouse, and they're trying to like unlock Vander from being trapped in that chair or whatever. And like at that point, it felt like, how are they even going to get out of this? So that's where I was really like, okay, like I got to keep watching. Like I need to know what happens. But the notable scene is a less serious one.
Okay.
Literally, I had to pause because I was like yelling when Vi says "you're hot, cupcake."
Oh yeah.
I like could not handle that. Like,
also got a message during that scene, so I should have known that you were going to say that. I told Sean, I was like, Sarah says she's feral, and Sean's like, wow.
Because I don't know, I wasn't expecting it. I don't feel like there's any like hint that was about to happen. I was like. So
caught you off guard. Yes. I like how Sean's like, I wasn't expecting Powder to actually murder her friends, and you're like, I wasn't expecting Vi to call Caitlyn hot.
Yes,
they're definitely equal. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely notable. I do feel like there's a lot of really great moments that are subtle too, because we've been kind of hitting the very obvious emotional scenes that I think get everybody, and then also for Sarah, the one that hooks people in other ways. But there's a lot of quieter, small details that I think that really make it seem like that's why it's elevated. Because, Christy, you were talking about, you feel like they know what they're doing, or the writing's really well done. And Sean, you were saying it's not necessarily entirely the most unique thing, but they just have a way of doing it all really well. And I feel like it is those small details. So I feel like not only is the artistry of that bridge scene and the fight between Echo and Jinx really good, And there's obviously, like I was saying, the details that I wouldn't have known because I haven't played the game, but apparently for game fans, there's those things too. But leading up to that, when Jinx comes over and she's like singing, humming, once the like explosion and things like that are happening, I think it might not be the exact same song, but I think it might be the same song that she's humming at the very beginning when she walks into the bridge with Vi and there's like all those bodies around. Those little details that you're like, oh my gosh, because most scenes wouldn't have in a lot of other shows. I feel like they would just have, okay, there's an explosion. Okay, now they're fighting, and it would be a cool fight scene. But then they always find a way to add in those small things to elevate it. So were there any small things? I feel kind of bad. Sarah, you can go first this time. Were there small things that really stood out to you? Actually, I remember you messaging about one thing in particular that is a fantastic, really tiny detail.
Yes. So Silco's ashtray was like decorated by Jinx. And like I think they'd shown it a couple times before I really like looked at it, and I was like, oh my god, like he has like a piece of like, I don't know, it felt like a dad just having their kids craft on his table, and I was like, that's literally what it is. So
yeah,
I really like that. I think I saw something that his cup was also made by her, but then I couldn't like find a picture of it or anything.
I don't know if this is confirmed or if I'm incorrect about this. I thought I saw something about in an AMA, and I don't know how we would know this if it weren't for somebody revealing this, but I think they said something like he taught her how to braid her hair too, and you're just like, oh my gosh. That makes me really sad, the idea of that. And I think this has come up because of the design for her in season 2. I think some people have noticed it looks like she's cut it, and they're wondering if that has a link like now that he's gone or something. So I'm like, what are you doing? But I wanted to show the ashtray like you were mentioning. Here, I'll go to a different one where you can see it up close. Because that is a really great detail to notice. Let's see. Here it is. Sean, did you ever notice that?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree though that it does feel like the random little thing that the dad has on his desk at work. It just so happens to be like the mob boss's daughter decorated his ashtray. It is a really great detail. Were there other small things that you noticed?
That was the first one that came to mind.
Sean, what about for you?
I don't know if I noticed small things. I can't think of anything.
Okay, well then what's another thing?
I only noticed big bombastic things apparently.
Well, what are some other things that stand out in general then? What are some bombastic things that you really enjoyed or had thoughts about?
I don't know. I think only because I see her in the picture there. Can we say Mel sucks? I hate Mel. Mel's like the worst. She's so annoying. Anyways,
she's so pretty though.
That is true.
I feel like Mel is very sneaky, but I think she's one of those characters that you do find her to be rather cutting for so long, especially because the other council members are, well, at least the one seems like a complete buffoon, the one that's like, oh, about the child's toy and stuff like that. You don't really know that much about the other ones. You're like, that one seems slimy, and like that one has a weird gear thing on her neck. But then one of them's like a robot. So she seems like she's the most obvious among them. But then when you see her mom, you're like, oh. And her mom's like murdering a kid in front of her when she's a kid. And you're like, okay. So she's actually, I think, trying. She just has a very flawed view of, she actually kind of came out, I think, relatively well adjusted considering her upbringing. But I think for me, she's not, we'll get into characters in a second. I want to make sure, Christy, you get more time. But I feel like when you have her constantly, a lot of her scenes, it's like the other person alongside her is Jace. I'm like, it's Jace. He's like, I can't stand him. So I'm like, compared to him, at least she has thoughts of her own for more than just whoever is talking in front of her. But we'll get to that. Christy, what were some notable moments for you?
So
I mean, you love
all,
Silco.
I loved Mel. I think she's great. Especially considering the kind of people that she has to work with, most notably Jace, but like her political maneuvering in the background, it's just so, it's like all the political intrigue kind of stuff that I love. So I love Mel. And speaking of that other counselor with the toy, like that's like one of the details that made me laugh was like she gave him this child's toy for his birthday. And then like however many years later, I don't know, it was like 10 years later, he still has it. I'm like, he still hasn't solved it yet.
I do enjoy that. I do want to say, I already had a feeling that you were going to like I knew, I was like, there's going to be some Victor love when our friends watch this show. But I also was like, Christy loves the kind of cold, beautiful lady character. So I was like, I'm pretty sure Christy's going to love Mel. And I'm excited to know I called that.
Oh yeah, if we go back to that waifu husbando tier ranking after watch this, my choices would have been much different, and I think we'll get to that. But just like the animation is so good. Like when I was watching it, I was like, the animation is so detailed and everything is so smooth. I'm like, how did they animate it? Because I wouldn't be surprised if it was like a motion captured real people. But it's not, right? Which just makes it so much more amazing. Like there was that one scene when Echo, I think he's oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
The points when he's talking to Vi, and it's just like such a subtle, like innocuous thing to do. Like he before he says his sentence, he licks his lips, and I'm like, that is so random, but it makes it look so real and so human.
Yes.
So I was like, that moment kind of like blew me away a little bit.
I thought almost an identical thing to in the scene where the warehouse scene where where Vander and Silco are kind of having that standoff, and Vander is collapsed and Silco like bends down, and it's right before he has his iconic like you'll die for a cause but you won't fight for one line, and like as he's crouching down, he's like slicking back his hair, like kind of annoyed and not even realizing he's doing it. And he does it a number of times. So it feels like it's attached to just him always being exasperated by everyone around him. Like, why is nobody as smart as I am? And he's just like, like constantly. It's not like a cool guy hair slick or anything like that. It's a very, I'm unaware that I'm doing this quirk. And a number of, he does it too when any kind of underling or anybody mentions that Jinx is a problem. He has like a tiny eye twitch, and it's really tiny. It's not like over the top or anything like that, but it's just like this tiny hint of annoyance. And it's like you were saying, Christy, it's those little things where you're like, oh my gosh. And then Sean and I, when we were rewatching it, I was telling him, I was like, the animation is so good that, when I feel like TVs got way better and everything was in high definition, and then you would watch older sitcoms in high definition and you're like, it almost looks weird because it's like too good. And so it feels like it doesn't, I don't know. It loses some of its, like, it doesn't feel like you're watching a show. It feels like you're watching something someone captured on their phone almost. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like Arcane's animation is so good that there are times where it creates that same feeling of, it really just feels like someone is right there in front of you. I think I felt that when Jinx walks back into that hideout of theirs, and then she's grabbing the old piece of the boxing machine and she puts it back up, and she's kind of looking at all the stuff and remembering when they were kids hiding out there. Something about the lighting and when she comes in, I thought the motion is exceptional. But anyway, sorry, you were still talking about things that were notable to you.
And then I don't know if we're probably gonna talk about more characters and like character arcs and stuff. So I'll save that.
Oh, go for it, because I thought we'd jump into that next. So.
Oh, okay. So like I just love, again, anytime a show does like these kinds of parallels, especially this one, like really well, it just really gets to me. Not just Vander and Silco, and as you mentioned, Vi and Jinx, along with Vander and Silco, but also with Jace and Victor, like how in the beginning, Jace was the one that was like, you know, I'm like, I don't think we should, you know, he was hesitant on revealing the hex core because it's like, oh, it might be too dangerous. It's too soon. And Victor was like disappointed that he didn't want to present it. But then at the end, towards the end, after everything that happened, Jace ended up being the one that's like, we need to use this to like help people. And then that's when that at the same time Victor realized like how dangerous it was because of what happened to Sky. And then he ended up being more hesitant, like he wanted to stop it. And I just love how like the character arcs are and how these two are like the same but opposite.
Yeah. I think there's so many elements to the Victor Jace friendship, partnership within their work dynamic that's really sad to me because I just, even without it, it's, you never see Jace being really, he's never yelling at Victor or belittling him or anything like that, but there's just always this feeling that you're like, their friendship just doesn't quite feel like the way you want it to. You know what I'm saying? Because they end up obviously knowing each other for years. They work with each other. You imagine they're basically best friends. But I think what kind of strikes me is obviously when the news is delivered that Victor is dying, I do think it's really nice that Jace immediately went to his side and he, you know, basically apologized to Mel later, like Victor's dying. But what's interesting to me is you pretty much don't see Jace go interact with Victor like one-on-one after that. So it's like your friend's dying and you're like never go and check on him unless you guys are like working or he happens to be sitting on the bridge and you get mad at him because you're like, how did you, like, this looks so bad to have my own partner not obey this law I put in or whatever, or this order, this temporary order. But he doesn't really go interact with or check on Victor. I don't know why I keep mixing up their names. They're very different characters, but to a point where it makes me really sad to think about the fact that Victor, even that one moment of like triumph that he has where he gets to run, he experiences it alone. And you're like, his life is so solitary. It's so sad. Like you would want him to be like, hey, will you come with me in case, you know, I fall or this doesn't work or something. And you would want him to have somebody to celebrate with. And instead it's like he's all alone. And then when Sky dies, the other thing I'm like, Jace knows Sky exists, right? Is he that oblivious? Because he never seems, nobody notices that she died. So I'm just kind of like, yeah, wow, Jace is just off in his own world for a lot of it. And it makes me really sad. It makes me sad for both of them, honestly. I feel like they both could have had a much better friendship between the two of them. But since we're on the topic of Jace and Victor, there are so many things. We can talk about them for a while. Sean, you haven't had a chance to talk for a bit. So what are your thoughts in general about Jace and or Victor?
Well, I just want to say Jace was busy being a council person, so he had a lot on his plate. Yeah. So it's hard for him to keep up with everything. No, Jace is super annoying. I don't care for Jace. I mean, you've brought this up, just how like he with Mel, he goes from like, oh my gosh, I would never, you know, do that. And then like she's like, well, I mean, like it's politics, everyone does it, you know, like if you scratch his back, you know, he'll scratch yours. And he's like, okay. I mean, it's like it takes like 30 seconds for him to be like, actually it's fine, you know, like so yeah, that's not great. I'm trying to think if there's any good Jace moments. Are there? Not really.
I do think when he tells Mel, when she's like, my family doesn't think very highly of me, like I'm basically a nobody, I'm nothing, and he's like, I don't believe that for a second. He's like very, and she's like, oh, okay. It's when he's like laying in her lap and then she's like, whoa, what's happening? I have to say, because I brought up my mom earlier, there was a weirdly intense satisfaction that my mom also had almost identical reactions to every annoying Jace moment. But that one in particular, my mom's like, ugh, like she was so disgusted by it. I thought it was really fun. She's like, "Oh, he's so annoying." And I was like, "I know," but anyway, not him saying something nice.
I will say about Jace, if I'm going to be kind, I do think like I go back and forth with what's his face, Heimerdinger.
Yeah.
That's funny. The Heimerdinger things, like, it kind of annoys me sometimes. I do get their point. They're like, hey, we're not going to live for like 500 years, bud. Can we like move this along? And especially because it does seem like there's good that can be done with the technology. So I see both sides. I actually don't mind that Jace and Victor were kind of pushing to make advancements quicker. Heimerdinger being like, oh, but safety first, was like, come on, guy, let's move it along.
Sean, do you want Sean kept forgetting his name was Heimerdinger.
I didn't forget. I just liked my name better.
Okay, well, do you want to share what you called him?
I mean, no.
Why? You can say it. I know.
I called him Humperdinker.
Oh my god!
All the time.
It's not even a name.
He would be in the middle of having like a serious thought about the show. He'd be like, "Well, Humperdinker lives a long time," and I was like, "Sean." I do have to say, for anybody that watched the deep dives, apologies because I'm going to repeat myself here, but the way they utilize the amount of presence on the screen when Jace is kicking him off the council, essentially, where he starts front and center, and then the further in Jace gets into his speech about how, well, who checks you? And then they're all slowly voting for him to retire. And it goes from Heimerdinger being in the center, and then slowly he's like pushed basically off the screen. And then by the end of it, Jace is front and center. I was just like, oh, there again are those little details where it's they're utilizing cinematography for that. Yeah, Sean.
Can I say one thing that's like not important at all?
Of course.
So, okay, it's fine. It's a fine show, but both times I wondered, what is this political government system where it's just like you need a few votes and you're like, you're out of here, bud. Like, I don't like, what is that? Like, it takes a few of them vote and like, you're on the council now. And then it's just like, we don't like that guy. Get him out of here. Like, I'm like, what is this? I don't like, anyways, I found that, I mean, I guess it's an oligarchy. I don't know. Like, it just seems rather strange that they can just boot people at will, but
didn't seem like they did until Jace entered the picture too. Because I mean, it was the same group of people until he sticks his nose in things. I did find it really amusing when Mel is like, I think that he should represent, the technology and things like that. And he's like, And then later when he makes a mess of things, because he's trying, he's like trying to crack down on crime and he's upsetting all the corrupt politicians, we'll call them. And she tells him, like, you put a target on your back, right? And he's like, oh, you pushed me into this. And that voice actor, I feel so bad for them because they do such a good job of sounding so whiny and pathetic in that moment that I'm just like, oh my gosh. I
did push him into it. It's true.
I like how he didn't care at all until she told him, like, there's consequences for your actions. And then he's like, oh, no, come on, it's your fault.
That's exactly what he sounded like.
Yeah, it's not far from it. I just want to point out that Heimerdinger was the only one that wasn't actually corrupt on the council when he's going around shaking everybody's hand and making all these shady deals. Heimerdinger's just like, oh, the music. He's just enjoying like how great the Ray Chen
is. To enjoy music when you're 500 years old. Let me tell you, it's not the same. Yeah. Actually, maybe it's not. Maybe the music's changed a lot. Maybe he's like, this is way too modern.
I was gonna say, also, I don't know how old he is, but I think they said that they had a centennial in the city. So the city itself is about 200 years old, I think, right?
He's at least 300.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure I was kind of thinking, Sean, when you're like, music was, easier. I was kind of like, you already are an old person when it comes to, you're always like, music in my day. So, anyway, Sarah, what are some Jace Victor thoughts? Because that's kind of where we currently are.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed is that kind of what Christy said about them being like parallels but opposite. At the beginning, when Jace gets kicked out basically of the academy or whatever, and he goes back to his like study or whatever, and he stands on the ledge and he's like potentially going to jump off, and then Victor shows up, and then at the end or towards the end, I can't remember how close to the end it was, but Victor's in that like, I don't even know what it is. I think of it as like a sewage pipe, but I don't think that's what it is. He's like standing on the edge, like he's gonna jump off, and then Jace comes in and like,
and he says the exact same thing.
He does.
Am I interrupting?
Oh, I didn't notice that.
That's exactly what Victor said too, and I will say that's the one good Jace moment for me.
Yes. Yeah, and I was so like irrationally mad when Victor is like dying basically, and that's like the scene also where Jace and Mel are sleeping together, and it's like it just felt so like Jace should be over there, like he should be studying and like researching with Victor. Like, why is he doing this? I was just so upset during that scene.
I will say I had a similar thought the first time where I'm just like, okay, so this guy's getting some action while this guy's dying. What the heck, you know? But I will say I don't know if I can fault Jace for like, you know, enjoying his time with Mel. We'll say she kind of like, no, I'm gonna stop what I was gonna say, but she sort of initiated is all I was gonna get at, and he, you know, was like, okay, because that's his reaction to most things. But anyway, so I think the second time around though, I'm like, well, it wasn't like he ditched his friend to go hook up with her after, like, it's not like he knew. I'm not trying to put down what you're saying. I'm saying I felt the same way. And then the second time I was like, okay, rationally looking at this, he didn't know that Victor was going through this in this moment. But I do think that what that highlights is the way that Jace just has so, not just like in as far as like relationships with other people, but also opportunities, even though it's their shared work. I feel like people always notice Jace. I don't know how everybody always seems to overlook Victor. And I think there's a lot that can be dissected even about that. But it's really devastating, I think, to watch the way that you see these two people that are both responsible, but then Jace gets all of the recognition. He's the golden boy. He's the one that Mel latches onto. I don't know if maybe she just feels like she can't sway Victor or something. She just sees something easy to manipulate in Jace or something like that. But he always gets like the credit for things. And I just think that that scene sort of parallels that while one person is suffering, this person is benefiting in some fashion. But yes, the several things there I completely agree with. Sean. So we were talking about Jace before. What are some Victor thoughts for you?
I like Victor. Big Victor fan. But I will say, I don't know, things are complicated. None of it would have happened without Victor's prompting, right? I mean, like, Jace was just like, geez, and he threw in the towel. And then Victor's like, how about we sneak into the lab? So, you know, I mean, I guess that's good. They have better technology now, but then at the same time, you end up killing your assistant by accident. So, you know, I don't know.
And you could say it's because they didn't listen to Heimerdinger.
That you could. A lot of layers here. But he seems cool as a person.
Well, it's sad because I'm like, to your point, like I think so much of his pursuit, I think they use that word, the pursuit of doing good things. I think Victor's arc in the long run is very much going to be a continuation of like always pursuing something with good intentions and then it ending up getting completely out of control. I think that we don't actually showcase that much the repercussions of the fact that the Hex Core basically ate a person and it's got his blood in it now. So I do wonder how linked they are and if he's even going to have complete control over even himself at some point. I don't know. I'm very scared for Victor's arc. I'm very nervous. But it is a very well done version of, you know, Christy, at the beginning you were talking about, it's got a lot of the tropes you like. It is pretty much the perfect example of the like mad scientist, but actually done well and not cheesy and cliche where it's like, I don't care who dies. I'll sacrifice anybody for this, you know, whatever thing they're trying to attain. I don't feel like it's that concept at all. He's just a genuinely good, smart person who's trying his best and maybe is dabbling in things he doesn't entirely understand that are going to get out of his control, which actually, Christy, I don't know if you want to bring it up, but you had mentioned that you feel like there were parallels between that and like AI as well. But yeah. I know you love Victor, so if you want to make sure you get in some more Victor love, feel free before you. And you also don't have to dwell on that too much if you don't want.
So first of all, I love Victor. He's maybe first or...
Oh no, did you cut out? Do you guys have it cut out for you too?
The AI got her.
They didn't like us hating on it. Well, hopefully it comes back in. Oh, Christy, are you back?
Hello.
Okay.
They got me. Okay,
yeah.
But I'm back.
How do we know
I love Victor.
Christy?
He's probably tied for like my first or second favorite character. Just like the whole, character aside, his whole like sickly Victorian boy aesthetic. I'm like, yo, that's my thing. Just his whole backstory, his character arc, everything about him as a character is just so unbelievably tragic. And when I finished, I was like, okay, time to watch Elle's in-depth analysis of all of like Arcane and see what her thoughts are and be prepared for this discussion. One of the things that you mentioned was how, you know, he was like always like pursuing this thing, but it's really, you know, even though he wanted it to cure himself of this disease, it only took one person being hurt or dying for him to realize like the dangers of everything and put a stop to it. And I thought that was just, again, like, I don't know, so sad.
Yeah, I think to go off of that, I do think I was giving Victor a hard time a second ago, but you're right. He is like, hey, let's pull the plug on this once things go bad. Whereas I think the other characters are too like, this technology magic, what do you want to call it, makes us too much money. Like, why would we stop? You know, that sort of thing. And that is bad. That is a bad reaction to that.
He's also very adamant about when they talk about trying to use hex tech to make weapons. He has, it's like his most forward line where he's like, absolutely not. It's like, that is the line for, he's absolutely not. If it's not going to be used for good, then I do not want this in your hands, basically, or I'm not going to be a part of this. So I do feel like, and he also, I find his motivations for wanting to do good, it's not just literally a personal thing for himself, but he, having grown up in the Undercity, recognizes a more tangible means of what kind of good can come from hex tech. Whereas I feel like why Jace kind of always feels like it's just surface level is because he talks about it from a conceptual, like, this will help people, but he doesn't actually know what people of the Undercity need for help. He just speaks of it in this grandiose way, which again,
he really doesn't, though. He really just ends up lining the pockets of the people already in power. The Undercity part that you brought up earlier, the part on the bridge where Jace is like, we have to get the Undercity people. And I was like, hey, I'm from the Undercity. That is so sad. That makes me sad. Both times I watched it, I was like, no, be nice to them.
I know. That's
a good guy.
The first time we watched it, Sean's like, is Jace going to become a dictator?
I thought you were just going to say, is Jace going to become a... And I'm like, he already is.
I thought you were saying that too. I was like...
But I really appreciated in that moment, Sean, that like Victor like smacks his hand away.
Yeah.
And which I feel like has additional depth to it because it's not just like, ugh. It's also like somebody who is very, at this point, physically, I mean, he's dying. We know this. And even he's like, no, I don't even want your help right now. I don't want you to even touch me and assist me. Like, I'll do it myself, even if it's more of a struggle, because that's like how pissed off I am at you for thinking. And Jace is just, so I try to give him some credit. He does say when he's giving that presentation to Heimerdinger before the big announcement for Progress Day, like, oh, this is going to help people, when they're talking about like, this is going to help people in the mines, and like, this is going to help people. I do feel like I noted, and this is one of those details I actually don't think I noticed this until the third time I watched it, especially because it's across episodes. But he says this will help people in the mines. And then later when Silco has that kind of awesome, but just like almost stereotypical bad guy moment where he like releases that gas and he's like, do we all forget what it was like to be in the mines, how suffocating the air was? And you're like, okay, so how about instead of trying to make people more productive in the mines, we actually find ways to like keep them safer? Because there's a part of him like, can we not give anybody any kind of like equipment? Because the enforcers go down there and they always are like geared up because they can't bother to breathe this polluted air. Meanwhile, we're like, can you maybe like produce more? And it just kind of feels like, I don't know, it's hard to not tie things to actual like politics or history where you see like the working class and the concept of like unions and stuff. And Jace is like, but like we can help them. And I get what he's like, where he's coming from, because he's like, I want to make their work easier, but he just doesn't know what that entails. And it's like, so that's why I'm like, I'm trying to give him some credit. I really don't want to because I find him so annoying, but I do want to give him credit where I feel like the few times he has moments of decency. Sarah, did you have any more thoughts before we talk about other characters besides just Victor and Jace?
One about each of them real quick. Also all the equipment that Jace gets initially is from the Undercity, so he's like using all this equipment from the Undercity and also using the knowledge of somebody from the Undercity to like create all of this stuff without like understanding or really even caring about the people of the Undercity. So I thought that was interesting. And then also when Victor is running, and the scene right after that, I think, is when Sky gets gone. I was like, this reminds me of Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he has that leg and then Sky's just gone. So I was like, okay. But that was just a quick note.
Overlapping some of my favorite things. Before we move away from those two characters, this always makes me laugh whenever I see this. I feel like I could do a whole video as to why.
I think you just look at that picture and you're like, this guy has a punchable face.
Yeah. I do think it's funny though, because when people, I remember talking about how like, I said it in like a very kind of casual, offhanded way, like how much I love Vi, and then I was like, I can't stand Jace. This was years ago, and there was this comment that was like, Vi pretty much succeed at nothing, and Jace hooks up with the hottest woman in the city, and he's rich and good looking. And I was just, and he's like, so yeah, who's actually the better person? Like,
I'd say Caitlyn's pretty hot too, Cupcake.
They're all, I feel like a lot of these characters, there's another Jace thing that talks about like all the ways in which he's supposedly supposed to be perfect. And at the end, it's talking about how like nobody has a crush on him in the fandom because everybody has crushes on like every other character but him.
Yeah, I didn't know anything. I really didn't know anything about Arcane going in, other than like it's based off of League of Legends characters. So like when I met Jace, that's my first time ever seeing Jace, and like I hated him. So like it's not just people hating Jace for no reason. Like
I was really curious because you do have a love of, as you've said, your own words. Are they dumb and hot? I know you love a himbo, so I was like, is she gonna love Jace? Is there gonna be some like butting heads in this chat?
No. It has to be like a himbo who's harmless, and like has a good heart. Jace, like he causes like so many problems, but he causes problems because he's stupid, and I feel like that's like the main distinction point.
Yeah. Yeah, so speaking of somebody who has a good heart and isn't stupid, I feel like we need to give Echo some love. I don't feel like Echo gets enough love personally, because like I know for myself, obviously I'm a big fan of Vi. Jinx, there's like entire video essays about her. There's lots of conversations about Silco and how he's a villain, but also he's sort of like the hero technically of Piltover, and he's doing whatever he can to make life better for. And then Echo kind of gets lost in all the talk about all these other characters, but Echo might be the most like compass is pointing north character in the entire show, in that he's trying to make, he actually takes his pain, which when you think about where we leave off in episode 3, he watched Benzo die like horrifically in front of him. And then one of his best friends accidentally killed his other friends, because he was friends with the other characters that died. They were his friends too, so they died. Vi has disappeared, so he doesn't know where she is. So, and he was little. So you're like, who took care of him? Probably no one. He probably took care of himself, and just, you would imagine, banded together with other kids and other people, and then took that pain and then did something really extraordinary with it, separate from how Silco runs things. It's like he found a way to make it possible to be somebody who is trying to do what he can for his people, but not preying on them. And I just feel like he deserves more love. And he has the coolest aesthetic also. Like, I loved pretty much everything about him. And I don't know why it didn't dawn on me, but his little outfit when he's a kid versus when he's adult, it's like kind of the same, but it somehow went from like cute little boy in overalls to like awesome kid with cool hair. And I don't know, I think he's just so cool. So anybody else want to join in on the Echo love?
I love Echo. I was so surprised when it was revealed that he was the leader of Firelights. When he came on, I like audibly gasped. I was like, oh, that's great. That's crazy. And that scene on the bridge when he's fighting, her name, Jinx, literally like my name here. when he's fighting Jinx. And like, again, like, you know, the parallels to when they were kids, and it's like beat for beat the choreography. And I was so devastated when the explosion happened, because I was like, I don't know what happened to either of them. And I think I texted both of you. I'm like, jail, because like if Echo dies, I'm like, this show is going to jail.
I want to shout out my mom again. Echo was her favorite. Like, little man, she's like, oh, he's so cute. Like, she just loved him. And then when they show him older, at first, before you know it's him, she's like, who are these people? And I was like, got any guesses? And then right before the reveal, she's like, oh, is it little man? She got all excited. And then when she saw him, she was like, yay. And then she's like, oh, look at, he's so cool now. Like, she was all about Echo. So my mom definitely shows Echo love. But that bridge scene, the fight already is sad with them as kids, like seeing the play fight, and then also the symbolism of the crow or raven, whichever it is, within that, versus the idea of him with firelights, and firelights being this thing of hope, whereas you do see the crow raven aspect of Jinx multiple times, so it's almost like death and light, darkness and light in a sense. But also, it's, for me, like the hesitation when and the way that whole scene is done after the music cuts, and it gets very ominous with just the sound effects of him beating her, because she doesn't stand a chance in a one-on-one fight with him. And it's like, then when he halts and he just stares at her and it goes into slow motion, and the expression on his face in that moment right before she sets off the explosion. Oh my gosh, the hesitation part. I'm just like, no, because he sees her too as a little kid. It makes me so sad.
What I love about that scene as well is like when it showed when they were doing that as kids, she always beat him, right? But now this is like the first time that he got the upper hand, and then he hesitates.
Yeah. Sean, what do you think
about Echo?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's like he's probably the best of them all. And he's like, you know, the guy who'd start like a nonprofit or something, or, you know, go help out at like a food bank. You know, he's just very like, he's a cool guy, nice guy. And I love his the tree, and, you know, the mural with all the people that they've lost. I like that whole place.
It's so pretty. I really hope that we get something with him and Heimerdinger that's actually like truly gonna change things for the better. There is a great irony that that Jace pretty much kicks Heimerdinger off the council, and then that council gets blown up. You know, he kind of got him out of there just in time. Sarah, though, what are your Echo thoughts?
I was also very surprised when he was revealed to be who he was, because like he was in the beginning, but I don't feel like he was there like super often. So I was like, oh, he's not even really like, I'm not really thinking about him. Yeah. So when it was revealed, I was like, oh my God, like I know who that is. But him and Heimerdinger, I'm very excited to see what comes of that, because it seems like there's a lot of potential there, especially with like the community that he's created. I think that could be really good.
Can I ask a stupid question? So obviously they're not 100% just peace and love, because they do like attack like a shipment of something at the beginning, right? What is it that they were trying to get, or what is their goal that way?
I think it was.
Is it like kind of like a Robin Hood, steal from the rich, give to the poor type?
Yeah, I think thing? that was Silco's shipment of shimmer that he obviously gets cuts out of and bribes people to look the other way and things like that. Maybe not gets cut out of. I think he like that is his shipment pretty much. And I think it's sort of a way to disrupt, because he's the only person at that point going up against Silco, because Piltover doesn't even know that Silco is a problem. That's what I think is, I don't know why that didn't click for me like several watches, but the fact that Caitlyn, when Vi is like, Silco basically is running the Undercity and Caitlyn's like the industrialist, like they don't even know. And that just goes to show how oblivious they all are, except for Marcus. But it just goes to show that like none of them know what even is a problem. So I think Sean, to answer your question, he's trying to almost kind of like fight back against both Silco and the corruption with the council. But that just goes to show how
Batman is what you're saying.
Yeah. I feel like that just goes to show how much he's also, because he could have every reason, like a lot of the other characters, to dislike and not trust the council. So when Caitlyn sort of asks him, you know, she even says, I would completely understand why you wouldn't trust us, because what's been done to you isn't okay. But like, I feel like this is a chance for us to bridge that gap if you return the Hex gem to the council. So the fact that he even agrees to that, like he's really going out on a limb to try to see them as people that he can have some kind of common ground with. So Jinx, it's like so many missed opportunities, because you're like, Jinx, no, because she's just so desperate to prove herself. Okay, I feel like we gotta start talking about Caitlyn and Vi right now. So I'm gonna have Sean kick it off, and then I'm gonna be right back, but I'm gonna be very curious to hear everybody's thoughts.
Oh man.
Go, Sean, go.
Well, Vi's awesome. I like Vi. I like it when she punches stuff. Even though she gets in over her head when she punches stuff. Caitlyn, I don't know. I'm curious what everyone else thinks. I think Caitlyn's kind of a little boring, but she's nice. She's fine. She's not the best shot. I feel like that's the other thing, is they're like, she's a great shot. And it shows her, you know, as a kid, like shooting stuff. And then totally does not shoot that one, like evil sidekick lady of Silco. She gets like, I'm like, what are you shooting at? I think she shoots her arm or something, or like her, you know, like something not a good shot, not from that far away.
Well, anyways. I mean, she probably doesn't shoot to kill. She wouldn't shoot to kill, right? Yes. Like that wouldn't be part, like, you know, aligned with her moral code. But I personally love Caitlyn, because I just love how she has like literally every single privilege that you can possibly imagine. Her parents are rich. Sure. Her mom's on the council. Her life is like basically like she can live in luxury and not do anything, but she insists, like she just wants to help people. So she insists on being in the like part of the enforcers, the police, because she wants to do good. And like she wants to get as far away from her parents and their pull as much as possible, even though her mom is constantly trying to like pull some strings. And yeah, I just love her. She's so cute and pure. And I love her relationship with Vi. They're so cute. And I like Vi, but Elle, I can definitely see why you love Vi.
Wait, why?
Just like everything about her, like how how she just like stands up for the people that she loves, and like how she wants to protect her family and all of that kind of stuff. I'm like, and she doesn't do anything bad.
Aside from hit her sister. The one like the
No.
one guys,
She was
it happened
what,
one
12?
time. No, I'm just kidding. I see. Okay, I do have to say there are certain things I have seen because there's lots of, people's thoughts that get floated around. And one thing is that some people hate Caitlyn and they feel like she, stole Vi from Jinx and like all these things, and that she is
I mean,
just
that's not accurate at all.
But
I feel like they're totally missing like the nuance of everything that the show is like portraying, if that's what they think.
Well, it is going off of that. There are a lot of people that think that genuinely Vi is a terrible sister. And one, I'm like, she was put in an impossible position of being both like a sister and a parent to Jinx. Like, I understand they had Vander, but she was trying so hard to fulfill a role that she was way too young to try to fulfill. And that.
Can I interject for just a second?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like people lose their cool on their little sisters or their kids over like, hey, put that down. Hey, no, I said put that down. Like, like stupid stuff. She just like killed their two friends. Like, I feel like of a moment in your life to maybe lose your cool a little bit. When you kill your two friends.
And that's like they're literally the only time, because like every other time, Jinx like messes up a job for them, she always like is the first to reassure her, like, you did nothing wrong. And anytime, Powder, back then she was Powder. Back when Powder was like feeling dejected, Vi would always be there to pick her up. And it's like literally one moment after their family dies.
Well, I think
and Vi told her to like sit this one out. Like, don't come along. So
I was gonna add though to this idea that like Vi is a terrible sister. There's a lot of people that feel like she chose Caitlyn over Jinx, like at the bridge scene and stuff like that, and that she wasn't there for Jinx. And I kind of feel like I don't want to be that person. It's like you just didn't get it or something. But there's a part of me, it's like, okay, if we kind of take a step back and think about what we're not seeing versus what we are. We obviously see that Jinx has been cared for, even if it's a weird version of a father-daughter relationship. She did have a parental figure once something happened. Marcus takes Vi. So she does think like Vi abandoned her. We know that's not true, but she has no idea what happened to her sister. So I get why she would have complicated feelings, but she did have somebody there that she was cared for, even if it was a strange relationship. Whereas Vi was imprisoned after basically her dad and her friends were all hurt in front of her. Then she was imprisoned. Then she was beaten in prison and she had like no one. So I'm just like, how easily, because people always look at Jinx like, oh, I just feel so bad for, of course. And I feel like it's a good thing is to have empathy and wish that Jinx could see a little bit clearer her own worth and value and things like that. But I'm like, we also could have had Vi very easily be completely changed by the beatings that she took in prison. Because the guard even says, like, I've lost count of how many times they've hurt her. And then when she, like, the thing that keeps her going is that she wants to find her sister and protect her and be there for her. I'm like, in what world is she a bad sister? It just like it irritates me.
And that scene where Jinx fires the flare and then she remembers like, oh, Vi saying, when you fire this, like, I'll see and I'll come to you. And like there's that moment where she thinks that like Vi is not gonna come for her. And then Vi shows up. I was like, yes.
I know, the last happy moment. Once again, they give us a good moment. They ruin it.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like
Echo ruined that moment.
Oh, Echo. Sarah, you haven't had a chance to talk about Vi and Caitlin. You know, and by the way, Sean, I heard you say you like when she punches stuff. I sadly didn't get to hear what else you said. But
I kind of just said Caitlin's a little bit of a snooze fest, to be honest. And it's not her fault. The rest of the characters are just much more interesting than her. It's like, oh, look, it's Caitlin. Yay. I also said she's not the best shot. I mean, they have like that flashback of her being like, I'm a kid and I can shoot any target. And then she pretty much just misses with that one lady, the bad lady who's beating up on Vi. She's got like a pretty open shot.
I don't think she misses. She succeeds, right? And then that's
she like
why
hits her arm. Like I guess what I'm saying is like,
I think she meant to do that.
I know, but why? Why?
Why would you make her a bad shot? She hit the target she meant to hit.
Maybe. We don't know.
I think we should let Sarah speak.
I don't know if she meant to hit her arm or not, but I love both of them and I love them together. I don't think Caitlin's boring. I really like her. Mostly for the reasons that Christy said already. But I just think that, like, especially the two of them, like, being one from the, like, upper city, what's it called? Piltover? And, like, one being one being from the Undercity, and them, like, kind of working together to try to, like, fix things. I think that's a really interesting dynamic, too. And, like, also Caitlin having to, like, confront the fact that she doesn't know really what goes on down there and having to, like, learn about all of these things that are happening. I think that's really interesting.
I think that it's not that I agree entirely, Sean, that she's a snooze fest, but I do feel like she feels maybe the most like many of us watching the show. You know, like I know for me, I'm like, I want to be Vi. I'm probably closer to Caitlin. Not that I have like rich political like parents that are politicians or anything like that, but you know, you're like, you want to believe that you're like doing good and you're trying really hard and stuff like that. Meanwhile, Vi is just like awesome. You're like, that's not me though. But I wish it was. So I really want to say, as much as I love Vi is like an all-time favorite character. I love her so much. However, the scene where she tells Jace, like, it's one kid and he knew what he was signing up for. And I was like, no, he didn't, Vi. And I appreciate, though, that the show includes moments like that. Like when Vi is extremely close or when she's desperate, that is when I think her ugly side comes out. So I am glad they had that moment. But I have to say, you know how I was talking about earlier with Jace? I promise I'm not going to launch into a whole Jace hate fest again. But you know how when there is that concert scene and he's like, you pushed me into this. And then 5 seconds later, he's like, partners has a good ring to it, huh? Or whatever. I feel like he does the same thing with that kid that he accidentally kills, where he's like, what do I even do? Do I just leave his body here? And then like 5 seconds later, he does. He just walks away. And then later, like Silco and the underling, who's it turns out was the mother of this boy, they like just show up and the body's still there. And I'm just like, okay, so you did just leave his body behind. Jace, what the heck? I feel like it's a detail that doesn't get talked about enough. Him being like, do I just leave the body here? And you didn't leave anybody there to go like help explain, like nothing. There's nothing. He truly does just walk away from the situation. Anyway, though,
just more Jace hate. But what bothers me the most about Jace is that he thinks he's such a good guy.
I know. There's like very little reflecting on his end, at least in my opinion. But Vi, that scene though, like before the sad part happens, that fight scene is so good. And there's that specific scene where it's like, it's a specific like couple of frames where she pretty much just has an ongoing combo because there's like no cuts and she just punches this one machine thing. I don't know. All of her fights, like her 2 fights with Savika, so satisfying.
That's the name of the person.
I I haven't watched them yet, but I was curious about it, and then it's like YouTube read my mind because I've seen videos pop up, and I really want to watch where boxers analyze the fight scenes with her, and then they comment on like the realism of it and everything. I think that will be really fun, but this show pays so close attention to these sorts of things, so I'm like, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty decent. They take some liberties, I think, given that
like the giant gloves. They don't.
Yeah. I do like the ongoing joke that one massive guy Vi keeps just knocking out. The one that's one of Silco's guys that she punches when she's helping Vander, and then she breaks his jaw when they're in prison. And then in the trailer for the next one of the trailers for the next season, you see her knock him out again. So she's just always knocking this guy out. I like that little bit there. But I think I like Vi also because she is a character that is kind of like rough around the edges in a sense, but also is simultaneously like very caring, and she's just trying so hard. And I think she can be at times kind of reckless, but she actually, I think, shows up a lot. That she tries her best to always do what's right. It's just her circumstances are so awful all the time. So there's a couple other characters that we haven't really touched too much on our villains, you could say. So we have Marcus, we have Savika, we have Silco, of course, and then maybe not as big in this season, but I think it's going to be a big role next season. We have Mbessa, if that's how you say her name, Mel's mom. So of those characters, do we have any thoughts besides Christy's questioning of her thirst for Silco?
I believe my exact words when we did the husbando ranking when I saw Silco was like, as soon as I laid eyes on this man, I thought I want him far away from me. Still kind of true because he is very, very bad, but I see like he is definitely like one of the top favorite characters of the show next to Victor. Just okay, the voices really factored into the ranking. You know, I feel like we really included the voices. I know that's too much. Oh my God, yeah, but yeah, his voice is so good. But also, just you see like those little moments with him that like shows that, you know, he's not just this guy who's out for power and wants to rule everything. He genuinely thinks like this is the only way for them to be like, you know, just like not suffer as a city. Like he's even though his methods are wrong, you know, he's thinking about the big picture. He wants to be independent from Topside. He knows that there's nothing Topside would do to help them. So I feel like he probably thinks this is like the fastest and only choice that they have. And like, and even though he killed Vander, there's that moment where he's like sitting at the fountain or the statue or whatever of Vander, and he's like talking to him. And then like he pours one out for Vander. I was like, oh my God, I love that.
There's nothing so undoing as a daughter. It's like, yeah. Oh.
And of course, sorry, I don't want to take all of the points, but like, and that end with Jinx. Okay, I was like, ooh, I don't know, that tension of that whole scene at the table was so crazy. Like I was like checking my watch, my heart was beating like over 100 from that scene because I was like, what's gonna happen? Because he was like reaching for the gun, right? And I was like, who is he gonna shoot? Because I was like, you know, you don't see what he ended up taking as part of the deal. And I'm like, is he going to kill Jinx so that he could get everything that he wanted? But then in the end, you realize, like he says, he literally could have gotten everything, but he wouldn't have traded Jinx for any of it. oh, and he's like, I would never have given you up, not for anything. I was like, oh my God.
I gotta say, this is one of the parts of the show that I think is a lot more devastating on rewatch. Not to be that person that's like, I've watched it more, but the first time around, like, their relationship is a little odd, right? Because I think she's still stuck in that child mindset because she's sort of like locked into the point of where a lot of her trauma stems from. At least that's my interpretation. So she acts kind of girlish and a lot younger than she actually is when she's around him. But it results in there being kind of a weird dynamic when you see her acting that way, but she's obviously not a little kid. And I couldn't tell, like, is he just using her or does he not actually care about her? When you know in the long run that he does genuinely care about her, then, like, watching everything play out is just that much sadder, I think. But yeah, that whole last scene, I think he genuinely wanted to stop Jinx's suffering, and he viewed Vi as the manifestation of like the things that are causing Jinx pain. I think he legitimately thought, if I can just get rid of Vi, then Jinx can entirely be herself. And it's kind of devastating that it took basically his death for her to fully be Jinx. It's so sad. But Sarah, what are your thoughts?
Just even talking about that last scene, I'm like, am I gonna start crying right now? So when I was watching it, you had told me to just like keep watching, and at that point it was like 1:00 in the morning, and I was like, I'm so tired. So I kept like having to rewind that scene because I was like, I can't miss this. And I ended up just watching it the next morning, and I'm so glad I did because that scene was like everything. I don't know. I was just like, I cannot believe this. It broke me a little bit.
I know. And the parallels to the very beginning of where, and Christy, you were kind of touching on this, where Vander was, and he didn't want to give up basically his daughter, Vi, for it to then conclude with Silco being in the exact same situation of not wanting to give up his daughter. It's like, no. Silco, I know, I think I know the scene, Christy, where you're like, oh, Savika earned my respect. Is it when she kills that other guy?
Yes, yeah. That was crazy. I was like, oh my God, like she had her, like she was getting her sword out. I had a feeling like she's not gonna betray Silco, especially when he started talking about like, oh, how he got to where he is, and like the loyalty is like a big thing. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, like he has the loyalty of the people like around him.
I also feel like they foreshadowed that a little bit because Savika, when that guy comes to her with his like, oh, I think we need new leadership and whatever things he's saying. And I think in that moment, she's literally like cleaning the blade. So I feel like they're like kind of hinting like, yeah, this guy's going to eat it. Like, and it's going to be via this. So I did enjoy that. Sean, what are your Silco, Savika, and we haven't talked about Mbessa yet, and Marcus thoughts?
Well, I'll talk about the ones I guess we haven't talked about. Marcus, kind of a slime ball, Let's I do feel bad that his daughter gets caught up in it momentarily, but you don't have to could go to the other police or go to the politicians. I guess he is the head of the police at that point, so whatever. But and then what's her face? Who's the other one?
Mbessa.
Yeah, not a fan of her.
Speaking of good voice acting,
very violent, kind of scares me, and a little entitled. She kind of just shows up expecting to be taken care of by everyone and treated as royalty, which I guess she is. So, teach their own.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say her introduction, I was like, the show's going places. You know what I mean? Because when the first season aired, at the time, there was no confirmation that we were getting another season. I didn't know how it ended, so I didn't know if things were going to like somewhat conclude or not by the end of the first season. But when she was introduced, I was like, oh, we're going to get way more in this because there's just too many lines that she drops and too many hints about things going on in other places, and those places being interested and concerned with what transpires within Piltover and Zaun, that I was thinking like this is going to expand for sure. I didn't know how. And then also with how it ends, because you hear her talk about her son, Mel's brother, being he got
dead, right?
I think he's dead, but at the very least he definitely got on the wrong side of a powerful man, is what she says. I think he might have died, but I don't know if he's
gone.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I'm like, okay, but now somebody's going after her daughter, so she is gonna be, I feel like, a nightmare for the Undercity. I kind of fear, if I imagine Jace is still alive, I fear what a team up of those two would look like, because if she can like convince him, I feel like they're gonna do a lot of damage to Zaun potentially. So, and also usually it's like you get a moment of triumph and then a moment of sadness. And the ending is basically like, at the same time that they're voting to give them independence, they're going to get blown up. And then just the frame too, like right before the rocket hits the glass where you see the reflection of it, is so good. But anyway, with Marcus, I feel like Marcus is one of the tropiest characters of like that slimy, corrupt, basically cop, who then bites off more than they can chew, and now they're being blackmailed into doing things. But that scene with Silco and his daughter's room is one of the most, I feel like, bone-chilling moments, because you're like, oh my gosh, because you don't know what Silco's capable of, and Silco doesn't seem to care about anybody else's kids, so you're like, is he gonna do something? She's so cute. No, she seems so sweet, nice. And Marcus's fear in that moment, and the little girl just being kind of like, that seems weird right now, but this man played blocks with me, and then he knocks over the blocks and is like, oops. Silco's just like terrifying all the time. But I do feel like when he fantasizes about destroying Silco, and yet he just is like forced to always obey, I'm like, oh geez. I do feel like his last moments of like, tell my daughter on the bridge, and then not being able to finish the sentence, I feel like even though he was one of the tropiest characters, I feel like the tropiest thing to do would be able to have him like get out this last moment of, you know what I mean? And like the fact that he doesn't even get to, that it gets cut off, you're like, oh no, that's really sad. And like, who's going to take care of his daughter now? Also, Grayson, the other enforcer, who actually was like, cool. I liked her.
I like her voice actor a lot too.
Yes. I don't know if anybody cares, but the part where she's like escorting Jace at the beginning, and she just like looks at him like, she looks so annoyed at him, and I'm just like, that's how you know she's a cool character.
She's a real one.
Who can't handle Jace, and that's like an indication. But yeah, I feel like Silco, I feel a little bad because we spent so much time talking about so many of the other characters. I don't know if we really got to give enough credit to how great of a villain Silco is. That scene though, what you were talking about earlier, Christy, with Savika, I like that he actually shows fear in that moment. He's not just like,
he wasn't sure what was going to happen.
Yeah, when she kills that guy, basically, he's like panting, because you're like, oh shoot, he didn't know either if she was going to do it. And I do kind of respect, and this I think is true of Savika from the very first time you see her, because you actually see her kind of with Vander at the beginning, which is why Vi's like, you traitor, because now she's with Silco. Savika, I think, is always about what is best for the Undercity. It's not that she's serving a person out of loyalty. I think she's loyal to the cause. And if whoever she's currently serving is no longer for the cause, that's why when he says, like, were you tempted? And she says, not for a worm like him, I think is what she says. I like how she's not
he
like,
won't be the last one. Like, yeah, implying that if someone better comes along who can do better for this city, like, she's out of there.
Yeah. So I feel like Savika, she's kind of cool.
And she definitely earned my respect, that scene.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see where she goes. We didn't really give too much time for Vander. Are you guys worried he's not actually dead? Because I'm very worried he's not actually dead, and I'm very scared. That's my fear.
I think he's dead.
You think he's dead?
I mean, I saw your video where mentioned about how he might not possibly be dead, but I'm like, if that's a possibility, I hope he's dead.
Well, because you see at the end of when the rocket is being launched at the council, and you're kind of getting like this montage of where different characters are, like Savika's recovering from being beaten by Vi, and like you get all these characters, these glimpses, and you get a glimpse of the very strange doctor who's the one that repaired Jinx and that Victor knew. And you do hear him say at one point, like, I too once had a daughter, and he's like looking at a locket. So you're like, is his daughter alive? And like, what's he looking at? But in that scene in the background, there's like a creature hanging from the wall, and you only like see its arms. And I'm just like,
For some reason I thought that was the giant axolotl.
No, not that. It's like more person shaped. I wonder if I can find a clip of it.
I still think his daughter is that weird lizard.
You're not alone. So other people agree with you, Sean. Some people think it's the lizard or the whatever the thing is called. I'm gonna see if I can find a shot.
A giant axolotl.
Sarah, what are your thoughts? Do you think Vander's dead?
So I also watched your video where you talked about that. But now that you're saying that they're like the thing in the background, that has me thinking about it. Because like I guess if there hadn't been any sort of like hints of that from like when he died to the end of the season, I would have thought no. But if that thing could be him, then maybe.
I'll show you the frame I'm referring to. So that's the frame where you see him, and then it like the focus goes to this, and I'm like, oh, I think that might be him.
I did not look at that closely.
I don't want it to be him, but don't you think that kind
I'm
of
convinced.
Because and I'm also terrified because I am like, okay, what is this gonna do?
Wait, sorry, can you show that picture again?
Oh shoot, yeah, hold on.
I'm trying to make out the shape. Like obviously I see the arm and the claw. But like they're hanging there.
Doesn't it look a little like a beard?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is that a beard?
I think so.
And that's like his armpit.
Yeah, I think. Let me see if I can find another.
Well, there's a beard and a mouth, a nose and an eye.
Stop.
Either Vander or a Wolfman. Is there a Wolfman in Arcane?
I don't know if anybody's called that.
Is there a werewolf in Arcane?
Anyone know League of Legends lore?
I mean, yeah, plenty. I'm sure. Hold on. Here's another. Let me share another one.
There is a werewolf character in League of Legends.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm really not looking forward to the emotional chaos they're gonna put us through. Oh wait, one more.
If that is the case,
okay, never mind. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, if that is the case, I can see this as something that could bring Vi and Jinx together.
Maybe. Wait, Sean, what were you saying?
I mean, yeah, it's probably him. You should look up the character Warwick.
I'm trying not to look up the character.
Oh, don't look up the character Warwick from League of Legends.
Here, this is like a glimpse from one of the teaser trailers. So, yeah,
it's definitely not him. No, sorry.
Gosh. I don't want it to be true.
Everything that I like keep seeing about season 2, I'm like, how is it only going to be 9 episodes? Like, I feel like it needs to be way longer than that.
I know, but watching any trailers. I'm gonna just like go right in and okay. It's coming out in thirds, right? I just want to marathon it all in one go.
I know, yeah. So okay, but you gotta watch the trailer of Vi fighting. That's like all this one trailer is Vi fighting.
Okay, you can link me that one because I don't want to see like any other potential ones.
Yeah. Do you like the pun Sarah, when Christy, you were watching the end and I said, I look forward to my phone exploding. And I said, no pun intended, because of the way the season
and then I was like, oh God, what's going to happen?
So, I mean, we had that one prediction. We don't need to go into too many. I know we've already been chatting a lot, but were there any thematic things that we want to mention really quick, or any additional details, or, you know, any predictions also?
Sorry, if I could go. So you mentioned earlier about what I said about AI in our chats and stuff, and just didn't get a chance to tie it together. But everything with like the way that they're talking about hex core, and especially Heimerdinger. I'm starting to call him Humperdinger. Heimerdinger. Like, yeah, at first, like, he's like, oh no, like, you can't show it. Maybe wait another 10 years. I was like, oh my God, is this old man for real? Like, you know, that's a really, really long time. But as things progressed, I really could see where he was coming from, like having all of these safety precautions. Because like one thing is like that they say, like, if you want, you know, to make progress, like sometimes you have to break the rules, because like otherwise everything just moves too slow. You have to like break out of the box. And that's similar kind of to, and then, sorry, my thoughts are all over the place, but like you see it in so many sci-fi movies, shows, books, where it's like that is such a dangerous thing to do, because very quickly it can get away from you. And they always start off creating these things for good, wanting to help people. But you know that as soon as you create something inventive, once like the military gets a hold of it, they're going to weaponize it, whether you want to or not. And so in our current real life, so the whole like conversation around AI and how all of these AI companies, they want to skirt all of those rules and regulations that are surrounding like what we should do with AI and what we shouldn't do. And like they just want to, you know, they just want to create it, and trying to, and like saying like if we abide by these like regulations, it's going to be too slow. But like those rules are in place for a reason, and it's to actually protect people. And I feel like all the lessons in sci-fi are warning us against this. And hex core, like the way that we see it and the way that it functions, it reminds me very, very much of AI, because like they show that it learns, and it's like it takes from, you know, it's starting to take like biomatter from around it, and could potentially control Victor now, from what we are seeing.
Yeah, I'm so nervous for what's gonna happen with that.
Yeah, so I was like, oh my God, this is too real. Which made it so much like more interesting to watch.
Because you're talking about AI, I didn't find the exact meme, but I found the image that was attached to this meme, so I'll share this in a second. And this isn't going to get super political, I promise, but there was this thing that's like what we thought AI would do, and it's like all these robots that are basically like in a sci-fi setting going to wage war against humans, and it's like what AI is actually doing. And I'm going to share the screen in just a second so you can see. But it's just
like in the whole
clip of,
and the whole
Trump
point of AI was to help people too, right? But now, like, what it's
just Trump and Kamala holding hands on the beach. So stupid. Like not doing any of the things we were hoping for.
Yeah. And again, it's like HexCore too. Like they created it to help people, but look where it got them now.
So, can I say something?
Yes.
I'm veering off from the AI thing a little bit, but I think going back to it's supposed to help people, it really doesn't at all. I mean, aside from like, it's like a shipping gate at this point. All it's doing is like now we can trade with other countries that are far away. Like it almost is like whatever vision Jace originally had, whatever vision Victor had, has been completely co-opted by well, let's first like make some money here. Like I think it's like it doesn't help the Undercity whatsoever. I mean, even him being like you said earlier, Elle, like, oh, we've got some mining equipment. Like that's still like secondary. That's not even like, it's not even that helpful, but it's not even like the first thing they thought to do. It's not how can we help the citizens here. It's not how can we make transportation in the city better. It's not any of those things. It's like this, you know, import export business. And I don't know. I mean, it seems like whatever idea that it was supposed to help the people has only widened their you know, the upper elites and the lower, you know, classes. Like it's only made that gulf larger. And I don't know, like it's sort of commented on. I mean, I feel like Victor is like, we were supposed to help people, but even that, like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it gets enough airtime, I guess, that like it has helped virtually nobody. I mean, like it's helped like the guy playing with, you know, the puzzle, the kid's toy. It's helped that guy and like the robot gear person and Mel. It always comes back to Mel. So I don't know. Like I think I guess that's where my
well, isn't there even a scene where they talk about how they don't want to use it anymore, and there's like this slow motion, all of them throwing a fit because it basically means, and then
because Jace says we should close the gate because for like security concerns or something, and then they're like, no,
but they have no problem cutting Zahn off from them, and I do like. I think actually Silco even says almost what you're saying as far as like it just increases the divide, because he even says something along the lines of they're just getting even further ahead of us, and he sees Zahn as falling behind. But I do want to not, again, I know this is like kind of a controversial topic and I feel like social media oversimplifies it, but I think Victor genuinely is trying to look at it from a standpoint of helping people with their health. And it just kind of, I do find that, like, you know, I have a friend who genuinely doctors are trying to get them Ozempic because they are diabetic. And it's so hard to get, and there's such a shortage of it because and there are medical reasons why people might use it for more than just being diabetic, but then it's like it's sort of just this thing that people who, if they want it and they have the money for it, that comes before the people who need it maybe the most, because it is like pretty miraculous in its strides forward when it comes to helping people who are diabetic. But it's like, okay, but like other people might have the money to use this however they want, so they get first dibs almost, and you're like, but it's like it should be being used for people who genuinely need it, are prescribed it, and things like that. So it's like even the medical advancement side of things, I feel like Victor is trying so hard for that, but it's like the people who have money and they want to use it for whatever means they have deemed necessary are the ones that get more of a say. So it's kind of like money talks the most. So a lot of things can be extrapolated and then applied to all these various examples of things. And I mean, that's a small, tiny thing, but I do feel like there's a lot of parallels. Sarah, did you have something to add with either this or any of the other themes?
I don't know. Like, just, I feel like there's so many themes in the show. Like, just all of the, like, political type of stuff that they're facing, and, like the us versus them, like keep those people out of our nice city kind of thing, that is like also very applicable to real life. And I don't know, I have like a ton of stuff written down, but now I'm like, there's just so much of it. Also, I guess kind of one thing that we kind of talked about a little bit, the like turning the technology into weapons. There was a quote that said, I can't remember who said it, but we're scientists, not soldiers. And I thought that was very interesting. Very
Sounds
like
Victor.
Yeah, I think it might be.
Yeah. But I mean, that's another common thing that if it can be used.
I guess Victor doesn't care about national security. What's wrong with Victor?
I think that might be the same scene. That's the same scene where it's Mel, right? And she's like proposing
I think so.
Like, making them into weapons. And then it's like, we didn't make hex core to like create weapons. And she's like, and she says something along like, oh, we might not use it, but it's just like to like just in case, right? And I feel like that really stood out to me because I'm like, that's so real world.
Yeah. And I do feel like Mel, I think she can't help but see the situation through a military lens, because in her mind she thinks of her own mother and she's like, somebody will try to come after us, so like we have to be prepared. I don't think she wants to go on the offensive, but like you were saying, Chrissy, that's always where it starts. It's like, well, just in case, might be good to have this like weapon stockpile. And you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm not so sure. And there is a kind of, I think, tragedy in that. Obviously, Jinx ends up finding a way to utilize it as a weapon. And rather than looking at who created this weapon, it's always, I mean, Jinx, obviously harming people is not okay. But there's been a lot of crimes committed by them, and they themselves would have probably used this same technology against the people of Zaun. But I think that because we already saw in the very beginning, I mean, there is parallels to like Vi accidentally sets off an explosion / Jinx, like through their theft, an explosion goes off. And the question isn't like, Jace, you had these materials, so should we punish you? It's like, well, let's look for somebody from the Undercity to put all the blame on. And now that you have somebody who actively made an effort to cause this explosion, we already saw the collective punishment that they put onto all of Zaun just from that small explosion in an apartment building that wasn't actually even caused directly by any of our characters. So the level of collective punishment that they're going to inflict on Zaun, I think, within season 2 is probably going to have extreme devastation as a result. I'm very sad and nervous.
That scene where they're trying to find like the Undersiders, like where I think what's her name, Grayson, is like, oh, they can't go back empty-handed. I'm like, what do they expect? Are they going to drag away like 2 little kids?
Exactly.
Like, yeah, exactly. What is that going to show anybody?
Right. Yeah, but I mean, the way that Jace basically gets rewarded for breaking the rules, and the way that they don't get that same treatment even a little bit, and Jace also gets to have Caitlyn's mom speak on his behalf. Also, I knew I didn't like Jace. I'll tell you my moment, since we were talking about at the very beginning, like, what's the moment that you were hooked? I'll tell you the moment I despise Jace.
Oh, I know the moment.
He throws a fit at his own mom. He's like, I would have convinced them. And he's like, oh, my own family wouldn't even stand by me. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? What do you think her being like, please let me like kiss your feet if that's what it takes? Like, don't hurt my son. Like, what do you think that is, idiot? Like,
Oh, and then related to his mom, and he's like, no one in my family, like no one in my life thought I would mount to anything. Like, what? Like, your family, you had your family, they supported you.
His Progress Day speech where he's like, this day is extraordinary because nobody ever believed in me. How are you making this whole thing like about...
And your mom is in the front row.
Yeah, yes.
It's Jace's Progress Day. Jace's progress.
By the way, 2 things. First off, I mean, I do question sometimes because they don't actually show it. But I'm not saying that Jace is an idiot when it comes to the Hex tech, because he obviously was in the academy and he like did well enough when he was there and stuff. But I'm like, how much would you have ever figured out without Victor's help? So I do have that question. Second, I understand that he had this fascination as a result of what happened when he was a child. But I'm like, if you hadn't been given kind of like a cheat code, how much of this would you have figured out on your own? But regardless, I do feel like between that character in that scene where you see Jace as a child and then that girl that Mel's mom kills, I kind of wonder if we're going to see more of the actual like magic users in their world, because we really don't see anybody actually use it in a more magical way. Like Victor sort of starts to, and that's when it becomes dangerous. But I do feel like for a show called Arcane, we haven't really actually seen it in that fashion very much. And I feel like showing that scene with Ambessa and Mel, initially you view it as like, oh, we're getting backstory to Mel. But I also think it's sort of foreshadowing where clearly her family had been responsible for harming a lot of people that looked like they had more knowledge when it comes to Arcane. So I'm kind of curious to see if that plays a bigger role in season 2.
We've seen magic in Heimerdinger's 1,000-yard stare. Whenever he thinks back, he's like, oh, no,
yeah.
Not magic. No, not that.
Yeah. And then, sorry, one more thing about Mel's mom. Actually, I did not realize that was her name. Ambessa, was it?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but yeah.
Like, obviously, like, the things that she does is terrible. But I find her such an interesting character, though, because of that one moment of vulnerability that she had with Mel, where she was like, Mel was like, oh, why did you do it? Why did you send me away? And she's like, because you made me weak. And it made it harder for her to make the decisions that she had to. So it's like, you know, like how much of what she does is like what she actually wants to do, or is what she feels like she has to do in order to be strong and not, and like have her kingdom or whatever not be trampled by the people around them who want to take power too.
It does sound like a lot of the rest of the world is not as peaceful as this area, and this area is not exactly peaceful either, but it sounds like a lot of the rest of the world is affected by war fairly often. But on that really chipper note, did we have any final things we wanted to mention?
Well, we never really talked about Jinx, right? Did we talk about
Oh
Jinx?
my gosh, how did we go almost?
She's in the middle right here.
How did we do
I was like,
that?
did I miss something?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Is she a banner?
Yeah. Of course. I can't believe, I'm so sorry. I think because
I can't believe you. No.
I know, I'm sorry. I think I just like blended my deep dives together with our conversation. I felt like we'd already talked about her. I'm sorry. Everybody talk about Jinx.
No comment.
Come on, don't do that.
Well, Jinx makes me sad because she was a innocent little powder for trauma, and now she's Jinx. I still don't think I don't want to be the Debbie Downer over here, but I still don't think the Jinx Silco relationship is healthy. You don't really see a whole lot, but I feel like a lot of them are like, oh, he just loves his daughter. He's a dad. I'm like, is he though? I feel like he's probably like maimed and or killed people in front of her, and she kills in his name, or again maimed and or killed people. I don't know if that's like the proper father-daughter relationship. I don't have a daughter myself, but
Luna, yeah.
I have Luna, yeah. So I don't know. I'm not really sold on the Silco love, to be honest. I feel like it's almost kind of I don't know. I think he cares for her in a warped way.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think it's his version of being a parent, but I almost don't think he even realized how important she was to him. I think that's a big part of it. I think Vander, when he in the opening kind of sets aside the path of violence and takes up the role as basically a dad to these two kids, and also like any kid that wanders into his general proximity, I think it was a conscious decision. Like, I'm setting aside violence and I'm setting aside the cause because this is what it does. It creates these orphans who have no say, and I don't want to do that anymore. And so he has this decision made at that moment, which is why I think he has these chats with Vi, and he tries to have these like fatherly moments with the kids. And Silco's like continuing to run the Undercity and reach for his goal of Zaun. And it's like Jinx is there, and he, I think, projects onto her a lot. And I think he sees himself in her a lot. And I don't think it's until he realizes he's going to lose everything that he recognizes that he sees her as his daughter. Because he doesn't ever call her that or refer to her as that until that moment when he's kind of having that heart to heart with Vander, we'll say. So, and also when he realizes like he's gonna lose her, because after the bridge scene, when he's like desperate, like anything, do anything, when he takes her to that doctor, and he's like, he's definitely having a meltdown over that, the potential of her being dead. So but I agree. I mean, it's not like, oh, they're so cute, he's so nice. Like, it's definitely not that even a little bit. Other Jinx powder thoughts, Sarah? What do you
feel like none of Jinx's relationships are healthy. Like, she was codependently attached to Vi in the beginning, and then she was basically like violently ripped away from Vi and like just attached to the next first person that she saw. And just like with everything that Milo, that little snot, would like say about her, and like it feels like Jinx is constantly just seeking for someone's approval. Like, first it was Vi like wanting to feel like she belonged, and now, you know, like she probably feels like that's the only way to earn Silco's love, is to do all of those like terrible things in his name.
I don't even think she recognizes them. I don't think she sees the consequences. I think it's just a continued pursuit of proving that she has value. So the way I kind of described it in the deep dive is that I don't imagine that she's confronted really, because if she admits that if she kind of like comes to terms with the fact that she was responsible for what happened to her friends, then she has to accept that like she killed them even though she didn't mean to. And so I feel like she has shut that down, and then she's just stuck in this place of like, no, but I do belong. I should have, because otherwise, if she's like, Vi was right, I should have stayed behind, then she kind of has to acknowledge that feeling she had as a child of, I don't have any value and I'm worthless. And she doesn't, that's a horrible place for a person to be. So to try to prove that she has worth, she's just constantly seeking outside validation. And I think she's looking for that in Silco, which is why she doesn't ever talk about like, oh, but we in the Undercity are mistreated. Like, she never has that kind of language like all the rest of them do. It's very much like, I can do it. Did you see what I did? And when she like hands Silco the thing, and she like sheepishly kind of like, her hands are behind her back, she like walks up and then she like hugs him, and he's like kind of surprised and stuff. It's always like, look at what I did, all the time. And anyway, sorry.
I can see that point about not unwilling or not able to accept what she did to her friends and family, because like she essentially like recreated them in her little world, and like to her they're still very much there.
Yeah. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, I think part of my, like, not issue, but part of why I wasn't loving the first couple episodes is because I just found Powder to be so obnoxious. Like, I don't know. I just did not like her. So, like, when she, like, after the
quick question, yeah. Are you the older sibling?
Yes.
The rest of us, are we younger siblings?
I'm also an older sibling.
Oh, okay. Sean and I are younger siblings.
I'm a Powder.
Sorry. Go ahead though, Sarah.
So like, even though I felt bad for her, I was still like, this is kind of obnoxious. So after like the first act and you like see her as Jinx, I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is cool. Like, even her character design as Jinx, I thought was like so cool. And like the way that they show her, like with the sketches and everything, I think is just like so interesting and so like I don't feel like I've seen like anything portrayed that way before, I guess. So I don't know. I just thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, it's artistically, it's like representing her own internal thoughts. But also I fear a little bit because in the very opening scene, that's how the enforcers look. But in that moment, it's Vi looking around because Jinx is covering her eyes. So I'm like, is this a thing that Vi experiences as well? Really quick, I also want to share, because you mentioned her design. The people have pointed out the way that the show has put the X's in Jinx's design and the V's in Vi's design.
Ooh.
I just feel like I was like, that's really cool. So anyway, I just felt like that was a fun little tidbit. But anyway, yeah, sorry. Thank you, Sean. I'm so sorry that I was like, I can't believe I did that. She's in like every thumbnail of my deep dives too. Whoops.
So question for the group. Is she the most interesting character? Is she the least interesting character?
I think she is the most uniquely portrayed, not just in the show, but in like, I don't think I've come across a character done like her pretty much in anything. So I feel like that's why she stands out so strongly. And I also think for somebody that does ultimately hurt people, I don't know if I've ever been like, but it's not her fault. You know what I mean? Like you come away from it consistently feeling bad for her, except for Sarah when she was Powder. But I do feel like you almost recognize from you know how we talk about, villains being like, I want to understand their motivations and things like that. I don't even know that you can call her a villain because it just doesn't feel like she is even really aware of what she's doing all the time, even though the consequences obviously are quite extreme. I think Victor is a very well done character because Jinx is very unique, but Victor's like the potential to be the most just whatever trope character, and yet he's incredible. And then I think that Silco, I just feel like Silco is so exceptionally done, especially because if I'm not mistaken, he's one of the only characters that was entirely new. The rest of these characters already existed in this world, and they, I think, completely made up Silco's character for this show, which just is a compliment to the writing. So I'm like, wow, props to you. Good job. I think those three might be the most interesting for me. So sorry, Sean. I feel like I cheated in answering that question.
That was a long response. Yes or no is fine.
What's your answer? Sean, you.
Oh, mine? Oh. I was asking the whole group.
Okay, you're part of the whole group. What is your
I
answer?
asked the question. I haven't heard all the answers.
We've come to the Elle and Sean banter portion of these live shows where they just trade barbs back and forth.
At least it's not us debating music this time around, right? Wasn't there? No, it was film. That's what it was. Anyway, we don't need to go into that. But anyway, Sarah, what would you say would be your answer to Sean's question?
I think so. Or if she's not the most interesting, she's definitely at the top for me.
Who else would be also?
Definitely Victor also.
And I'll add, because you talked about how the first thing that got you was your moment between Vi and Caitlin. So also, who's like your all-time favorite all around? Oh Sean, answering who's the most interesting, and then who's the character you thirst after the most. If there's overlap, that's okay.
That's so many questions.
Are we all doing these?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, and the character we hate the most.
Oh, okay. Jace. Like 100%, Jace. I already answered the first question, and then everybody knows that my thirst for Vi is on another level. Her and Clive from Final Fantasy 16 I've just like, I don't know. And then I love Jill from Final Fantasy 16 as well. But oh my gosh, are these two characters where I'm just like, what the heck? I don't know. So anyway, those are the answers to the questions for me. Christy.
Okay, so favorite all around. If I had to really choose here right now, I would say Victor. I'm rooting for Victor. Most interesting, honestly, Victor. One I thirst after the most, Victor. And the one I hate the most, I hated Marcus the most.
Yeah.
He was just so spineless, and I don't even know what his motivations were, to be honest.
I think Marcus is just a product of a difficult situation. So, yeah.
That he created for himself.
That is true. Sean.
What was it again? Favorite character?
Yeah, your favorite all around, who you hate the most, the question that you asked, who's the most interesting, and then who do you thirst after the most?
I think Vi's actually my favorite character. I like watching her punch people. Said it from the beginning. Most interesting, I do think, is probably Jinx for me, but that's just because I do think the first time I watched it, I thought I was really struck by the kind of animation they do when she's talking to herself or talking to her, what she thinks is her friends who are departed. Character I hate, I guess Jace. I think Jace is too much of an idiot to really hate, though. Like, he's just like, he's kind of dumb. I don't know if I hate the guy. I don't think I thirst after any of them. The
first time we watched it, you did like Caitlyn.
I know. She would be my answer. She was so boring. She's so boring.
This is like flashbacks to our waifu chat, and you insulting Jill all over again.
Jill's so boring too.
Also, I just want to say I don't think I answered all around favorite, and I'm gonna not double dip, and I'll go ahead and say Echo for all around, like the aesthetic.
Oh, Echo's cool.
I triple dipped.
Yeah, you just use the same person pretty much for all of them except for hatred. And then back to you, Sarah.
Yes. Okay, so most interesting, I do think it's Jinx. Favorite? Victor. Most hated, probably Marcus. And the one that I thirst after the most is Mel. She's so pretty.
Yeah, she really.
See, that could be my answer too, except I don't like her. She's manipulative.
You can say Vi. We can thirst after Vi together.
It's not Vi. That's the thing. It's not Vi either. It's like, I don't know.
I asked Sean the other day. I was like, I kind of am motivated to look like Vi. What would you do if I look like Vi? And he's like, well, I'd have to get really jacked too. No.
Hey, by the way, you know who is jacked and does not get enough love is Jace. I mean, I just feel like
somehow looks
when he finally takes off that coat, you're like, dang, Science Boy's been working out.
It's so funny when he's like in the forge. I don't know why, but like instead of being like, I feel in so many other shows that scene would cause a lot of people to be like, oh, but and I'm just like, oh, so annoying.
Also, can I just say his family, like we made hammers, like such a weird,
it's I think it's a lore thing.
I know it probably is, but what a fun thing to make. Just we make hammers.
That's why that's why it's his weapon, I did like the detail.
I did catch that. Yeah.
Did you notice? I did really like the drawing of like that he obviously did as a little boy where he had a giant hammer weapon. I was like, that's a good detail to have in there. I don't know if
I gotta rewatch this show. There seems to be like so many little things to pick up.
I'll show you really fast. Let's see. Jace's drawing of a hammer. I'm trying to be really specific.
I think that's like when he was reflecting on like, this is how he used to dream, like what his dream was as a kid. And now he's just like rubbing with canoodling with politicians.
Yeah, I think it's when he
So
goes
different.
back home. Oh, man, it's just showing me like drawings
like,
that people
hammers
have
aren't that big, buddy. Hammers are little. And I was like, oh.
I'm trying, man. I tried typing in like Jace's drawing, and it's like showing me people's drawings of Jace. I'm like, that's not what I'm looking for. Gosh, how is this not popping up? I feel like it's a really great little foreshadowing moment. I think it's when he goes back to visit his mom, and then like it kind of zooms out, and then you see this like little drawing of his.
Doesn't he like find it in a book or something?
Yeah.
Something.
It slipped out or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
And to answer the question about Jinx being the most interesting, I definitely think she is the most tragic character, and I don't see any world where she can come out with a happy ending.
Yeah. I kind of worry that Victor is also going to end up being a very tragic character. I almost feel like Victor's tragic. He's like aware of his own tragedy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if we're like sad for Jinx, and I feel like Victor is like sad for himself. And I'm like, I'm sad for you also, but like you're aware of why your situation is sad. You know what I mean? It bums me out. Poor Victor. I just want to be his friend. I like how Christy, you summarized it as like we are all Sky. Like we all are like, we admire you and we love you. So Sky, when the fact that you see that they knew each other as kids too.
I didn't catch that. I think I saw, I was watching your scene analysis. I think that was the video where you mentioned it. I was like, oh my god, that's Sky. But that means is she also from the Undercity then?
Yeah. I know, it's so sad. Well, on that very chipper note, thanks so much to my husband and my friends and Luna, who is now in this room, for a very fun chat about Arcane. I can't wait for season 2. I'm so excited. I feel like we'll have to reconvene and talk about it then. But I don't know if I can handle this next season. I already can't handle even talking about like the bridge scene and Victor running. So I don't know how I'm gonna handle whatever they're gonna do to us in the next season.
Unless we watch it like immediately. I'm sorry, record like immediately after the season's done. I'll have to take notes because I'm like, I'll probably be like, that was good. But anyways, what do you guys think?
Okay, this is what we should do. We should plan when our next chat is, and then we just count backwards. Like, oh, when do we need to start it in order to do the chat? And then we've all finished at the same time, and we just hop on and be like,
oh, well, the first weekend that it comes out, I have to dog sit for my mom, so we wouldn't be able to do that weekend. But I'm gonna watch these like as soon as they're available. So I don't know, unless we like record it the middle of the night or something on a Friday / it would be Saturday morning.
I thought at first you meant like record the show, and I was like, it's on Netflix. Stream Netflix.
I always like when you assume that I'm really stupid. Sean and I have a debate about when he misunderstands something I've said that makes me seem really dumb.
I think that means more that I'm dumb.
That's the debate. Does that mean that he thinks I'm that stupid, or does that mean he's stupid for thinking that?
I think it's more that one.
To be clear, we don't actually think the either is stupid, but it is like, I'm like, how could you have thought that that's what I was saying? When Sean thinks that I'm saying something really stupid also, and he's not like, he'll just not tell me that he'll just like go with it. And then way later, I'll be like, wait, but remember earlier when I said this, he's like, oh, I thought you meant, fill in the blank. And I was like, and you didn't clarify? What? So I wish I could think of a specific example, but it's not relevant. So it's not worth wasting people's time over. This has been very fun. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that the two of you watched and enjoyed it. I'm glad that I'm not having to be that obnoxious friend anymore. That's like, come on, guys, watch it. And that you did love it. I'm so glad that you loved it. And we will reconvene for season 2. Bye.